Well, welcome to week 8 of Making Sense of Learning and New Technologies. And having now gotten past the first assignment, we're getting into more detail about policy analysis and framing what you're going to be required to do for your second assignment, which is developing an implementation plan for an organisation to enact some of the ideas and concepts that you developed in your first assignment. So we've got 3 readings for this evening. The first is a UNESCO handbook on education policy analysis and programming. And then we're going to look at another document on how to engage your local community in such policy development. And then finally, a document on creating a vision statement. Of course, again, that'll be part of your second assignment, creating the vision for your organization that you'd like to see occur, and then the implementation plan will be how to enact that vision. But before we get into that, Sarah, is there any questions you might have from previous weeks or anything to do with the upcoming assignment? You probably haven't looked too much in detail at that just yet, having focused on the previous assignment. Okay. So no questions just yet, and we'll get into the readings, and we might be able to finish up a bit early this evening if there's not too many people here to have a conversation with. Okay, let me share the document with you. So the first main section to look at is the difference between policy, strategy, and planning. Now, a policy sets out what needs to be achieved. So we might have a policy of having every student be fluent in the use of technology in our school, or a policy of getting at least 80% of our students passing our courses, or something like that. It's set in place as to what we'd really like to have occur. And we establish our goals and we prioritize those goals as to which are the most important down to the less important. But a policy statement doesn't really tell us how to actually achieve those things. Now, a strategy is where we set forth some processes to achieve those goals. And we might establish who's going to be responsible for achieving those various goals. But it's only when we come out to establishing a plan is where we actually lay out exactly how we're going to achieve that, and we set in place a timeline and targets and the resources required, and set a time frame for the various aspects of that process. So it's just important that as we start looking at various documents and approaches, that we understand that there's 3 levels. Policy level is set often by governments and by groups that are looking at big picture perspectives around the whole country or economies and so forth, like UNESCO or the United Nations. A strategy is something that a leader develops and may set forth their strategy for a school or an organization. But the actual teachers and administrators involved in the organization, or it may be down to the classroom teacher, needs to develop a plan of how to put that strategy in place and how to make it achieve what the policy would really like to have achieved. So around that then, there's a whole lot of aspects around policy level making. Now, most of you aren't at a policy level where you're actually creating policy, but often you'll be reacting to policies that are developed by other people or by other organizations. But over time, as you develop expertise and get more involved in education and educational technology, you may be in a position to actually help shape policy and write policy and set forth what should be achieved at a big level. And quite a bit of academic research is around informing that policy level decision making, where we do a lot of research and that informs the people that make policy to hopefully align what they want to achieve with what the research says is achievable and how we should go about trying to achieve that. But policies do still need to be reasonably realistic. You can't just say, I want every student to get 100% in every assessment task or something like that. They need to be built on evidence and be feasible, both politically and financially. And ideally, they should be agreed upon by all the people involved. Now, unfortunately, that very rarely happens, particularly in education. Policy is often developed and then teachers and schools and other organisations have to enact that policy without having been involved in the process of shaping the policy. But in an ideal world, everyone would be involved in the shaping of policy as well. Now, in education policy cycles, we go through 4 steps. An analysis of what's been done before and what the situation is, and excuse me, very much equivalent to our systems analysis, where we look at all the different aspects around the organisation and what we want to actually have occur. Then there's a process of policy development and planning, where we look at all the different things involved and we create a plan. Then there's the operationalization of that, where we actually go about implementing that plan. And then there's a process of monitoring and review and evaluation, which will then lead to feedback and change. And the cycle should then continue. And we should see an ongoing process of improvement. But before that all starts, there needs to be a vision, often referred to as the 0 step, or the very first step, where someone has to come up with an idea of what they would actually like to see happen. And we'll discuss that in some of those earlier lectures in the course about the sorts of things we want to actually try to achieve. And we can use some research and documents such as the Delphi studies and Horizon reports and things of that nature to give us an idea of what's possible. And then from that, we can then shape what we would like to see achieved in our particular organizations. Okay, so that process is important, but we also need to understand the context of your particular school and organization and all the different factors, and that we looked at through the lens of the systems analysis, where if we do a really good systems analysis, that'll give us a good understanding of the context and then be able to identify particular areas of need and threats where there may be problems with actually implementing our particular vision. So there's lots of things that you can consider here. This just goes through a whole lot of aspects that you can consider as part of your systems analysis around the economy, the history and the society and the culture of your organization, the politics inside the organization. You may not have an awful lot of power inside your organization, so you may need to work through others like your principal or heads of department and so forth to help create the vision that you'd like to see achieved. And you need to understand the key stakeholders, such as students, parents, governments, the local community, the principal, lots of other people that would be interested in the outcomes of your vision that you want to get on board and have them supporters of what you're trying to achieve. So just skipping down through some of this now. So you've had some involvement with education systems because you've all been students, or many of you have been teachers and some administrators and so forth in education systems. But it's important to understand that they're very complex. And we saw that through our systems analysis. But there can be lots of different subsections and subsectors within an education organization, lots of formal and informal channels of communication, and lots of different perspectives on quality and how the educational process should be managed, the different pedagogical approaches, the different technologies that might be used, and sometimes even the different content that should be being taught. So this gives a little bit of perspective on the levels of complexity by looking at the three-dimensional aspect of all the different levels. So you've got different educational subsectors going from primary education to secondary to tertiary at university level. You've got different approaches to learning, the very formal learning that's done in a structured way, such as we're doing this evening, the informal learning, which might be through the readings and through other processes or sometimes through your assessment, and then also informal learning, where you just pursue particular areas of interest and other aspects of your learning journey. And then as another level of your access to various tools and approaches to achieve your learning, which might be textbooks or online resources or assessment tasks, the quality of those items, and then how they're managed. And across all of that, there's also aspects of gender, the quality of your teachers, your access to technology. In third world countries, disease and malnutrition can be major factors, and also sustainable development. Luckily, we don't have those major issues here in Australia, but we do have some other ones. So, a few of the key approaches that you should be looking at, making sure that your policy making is based on evidence. So research and documents such as this one that can help inform your development of policy. Making sure that you're fairly consistent and that you don't have widely differing perspectives, particularly within the same policy, where you may say every student is going to learn mathematics to this particular degree, and then in another statement say that students will be given a choice of the different subjects that they might choose and can have a say in that process, where you may be putting together inconsistent policy documents. And there should be a balance. So you shouldn't always be just trying to achieve the very, very best. There may need to be a progression towards that, and you may need to trade off various perspectives. So one approach may be to empower your staff, but that may mean you can't put as much effort into empowering students. And so you'll have to make decisions as to where your priorities are and what's most important at different stages. And then there's various questions that can help guide you in your decision making, pretty much reflecting what we just said. Excuse me. We're just skipping on down. That's the main aspects that you need to understand, but while we just pause for a second, Sarah, do you have any comments or questions about any of those aspects? Okay. There's a whole range of different approaches and methodologies you can use within this, but I'll let you read into that into more detail rather than my summary of it. Just seeing if there's any other major points that we need to bring out from this particular document. There's the different levels. It's just basically going into the different aspects of those dimensions and clarifying what they mean. But since you won't be using them in any particular detail, there's no real point of us in going into that much detail into those. Okay, so the fundamental things are from that early part where you've got the transition between policy to strategy to planning, and some of the factors that you should take into consideration when you are coming up with your own implementation plan. But let's have a look at the next document. This is the first one where we're going to look at creating a vision statement. So Sarah, have you, excuse me, have you ever been involved in developing a vision statement, or can you recall ever seeing a vision statement?
Sorry, I didn't catch that. What is a vision? What is that?
Okay, have you ever been involved in developing a vision statement? So a vision, sort of a what you would like to see an organization achieve or turn out to be in the long run?
Sorry, I don't know how to answer this question.
I'm just seeing if I can get the university's vision statement. Here we are. So this is the Griffith University vision statement. So it's a statement about what is important for our organisation. So we believe in a remarkable tomorrow, in doing our best and supporting others to do
yeah, every every school has its vision and values for students.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when you come to do your implementation plan, you'll need to describe your vision for your organization. So it may be for a foreign language school, and what you would like to have as a vision for that foreign language school. Is it to be the very best foreign language school in Australia or in whichever country, or maybe the world? Is it to ensure that every student learns in a friendly, supportive, encouraging way, etc.? You get to describe what you would like to see as your vision. We're not going to go so much into the concept of values because that is another whole area, but you'll need to actually articulate your vision and also incorporate into that your vision of educational technology. So what would you like to see? And it's a bit like to do with your scenarios that you wrote for your first assignment, where you describe what the future might be like. In that respect, you're trying to see into the future, and a vision statement is a little bit like that. But it's very much what you would want to see happen.
Yep, I got it.
Okay. So this next document is a process for creating visions for schools. And in particular, it describes a community-based approach. One of the problems with creating effective visions is that often it's done by the leader and not by the community and the people involved. So good vision statements are created collaboratively by all the people that are going to be impacted by that vision statement. So having all the people involved in the organization work on creating a vision statement. Now, for your second assignment, that's not going to be possible. You'll just create the vision statement for your organization, excuse me. But it's important to understand that in an effective organization, you would involve all the stakeholders in creating a collaborative vision that everyone then agrees to. Of course, it's no good having a vision that only the leader agrees with and everyone else disagrees with. So this first part sort of elaborates on that, making sure that everyone is involved. Having some link to performance. So a vision statement shouldn't just be completely abstract. There should be actually practical things within the vision statement that can be achieved. Sometimes vision statements are just too non-committal and don't actually sort of say that this is what we want to actually have happen. So a good vision statement actually has some link to performance. Making sure all the stakeholders are included, and in schools in particular that includes the parents, but most importantly it also should include the students and what they would want to see involved. But then the wider community and other organizations and teachers and support staff, everyone involved should be able to have some input into the vision, and that increases the ownership that they feel around that particular vision statement. And the reason we do all that is so that they get behind the vision statement, and the vision statement actually then leads to some change. Now, a vision statement won't generally lead to change by itself, though. There needs to be an implementation plan that that is aimed at addressing and achieving what the vision is set forward. But before you can have a plan, you've got to have goals, and your vision statement helps define your goals. Okay, this then just goes through some processes around getting everyone involved in this planning process, from strategic planning down to goal setting, and then you've got a set of long-term and short-term vision, and you get everyone together and you identify all these things and then start working out the steps needed to achieve that. Similar to the backcasting approach we looked at around futures approaches when we explored those in week 1 and 2. Okay. Then you come down to developing strategy. So once you've got your vision, you need to actually start coming up with strategies. Of course, often there'll be more than one way of achieving that vision. And strategy is really choosing between the various options of achieving the vision. And you need to identify those various options and then identify which is the one that's most likely, from your perspective, to achieve that vision. And that was part of what we did the Delphi process for, identifying the various possibilities and then developing a consensus around what's most important. And then we constructed some scenarios describing what would be achieved if those priorities were put in place and aimed for. Any questions on that one, Sarah?
All good. I'm just kind of reading.
Okay, I understand. And I would expect you to read these in more detail. Only going through them very briefly in this summary. And of course, ideally, you would read them before coming, but I understand that you've probably got assignments and other things that are higher on your mind. Okay, so the last document is a more specific visioning process. So it defines what a vision is. So it should include the mission, the philosophy of your organization, your goals, some basic strategies of how your vision is going to be achieved, what's going to be a measure of the success of that vision, and it might also include ethical statements and things of that nature. For your assignment, it doesn't need to go into that much detail. Really, your vision establishes your long-term goals of what you would like to achieve, and there should be a little bit about why, related to your philosophy or the values that you hold. But there's lots of benefits for creating vision statements. There's a few listed there. Primarily, though, it gets everyone on the same page and working towards the same goals. Otherwise, you might have people trying to achieve different things in your organization, and it's much more efficient if everyone is working towards the same goals than if there's a number of different goals that people are pursuing. So that's the primary purpose of the vision statements. And it can also help as a reflective process, where every few years you recreate your vision statement, and it just redefines what your classroom or your school or your organization is trying to achieve. Because sometimes we lose sight of that. We get caught up with the day-to-day running of things, and we can lose sight of the bigger picture goals that we're trying to achieve. And sometimes it can then push us towards achieving further goals where we've started to already achieve some. So some of the aspects around a vision should include the desired outcomes and benefits. I should ideally grow out of past decisions and actions. Now, in your case, because you're starting out from scratch with these vision statements, you're going to need to rely more upon your Delphi survey and your systems analysis to frame what you want to see for your organization. But for many of you, you're doing these on your workplaces and your classrooms and schools. And so you should try to actually go back and look at the previous vision statements of your organization and see what can then grow from that. And in particular, in this case, we're not going to try to look at all the aspects that a vision statement would include around a school or organization. We're primarily focused on aspects to do with technology and educational technologies. So don't worry about trying to do everything to do with an organization's vision. A lot of those things aren't related to what we're learning about in this course, but your particular focus should be around how educational technologies can impact upon your organization and the vision that you see around that. Any questions on that, Sarah?
You have just mentioned that a school should create a vision every year. Then what's the difference between vision and the goals?
Okay. not necessarily every year. In terms of a vision statement's normally redone every 5 years or so, but it will include the goals that should be achieved in that 5-year cycle. And fundamentally, the vision statement will, in terms of differentiating it from goals, is that it will include goals, but it will also frame the values and the nature of your organization, what you feel is most important. So around educational technology, some things that you might feel is most important at the moment is that every student becomes familiar with and comfortable with using technology. That may be one of your current goals. In 5 years' time, that may be achieved. And then you'll need to look at new things that you value around technology. So it may be every student being innovative in their own creative use of technology, whereby that wouldn't be a goal immediately, but it may be in the next iteration. And goals are often set every year, while a vision statement should normally have a longer term focus. Some organizations don't change their vision statements for decades, but generally a 5-year cycle is fairly effective.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
But there's a few other things it should also be able to do. It should be able to be inspirational. So it should be something that you can sort of say to your organization and everyone then feels that that's going to help drive things forward and improve things. So it shouldn't just be a managerial thing of making sure everyone gets 5% improvement in such and such. There should be aspects of your vision that inspires people and drives them towards achieving excellence and greater things than would be normally expected. Everyone in the organization should be aware of the vision statement. It's probably one of the hardest things. Lots of organizations have got vision statements, and in the main, they're ignored and forgotten about until someone decides that they should be rewritten, and then everyone gets excited about them again. But ideally, for a vision statement to be effective, everyone should take note of it and ideally be reminded of it or refreshed with it every few months or so forth. Otherwise, it just becomes a process that just supports itself rather than help change your organization. Okay, so there's a few different processes here that describes some ways of developing a vision statement. The first one is a bit like the Delphi survey, where you gather up a consensus and get everyone to put down what they would like to see happen in the future, the things that they value, things that are important in their organization. Or you could have groups try to come up with their own little vision statements and then compare all of those and try to develop a consensus from comparing a range of vision statements. The third approach is everyone writing a headline for a newspaper story about the organization in 20 years' time. So what it's achieved. And you can also do a similar thing with pictures and words and try to create a visual representation of what the organization might be like in the future. So all of it is around looking to the future and what you would like to see happen through the implementation of your plan. Okay. So normally I would be having an in-depth discussion about various vision statements that you've all explored in the past and have had some engagement with. I won't impose all of that upon you, Sarah, because that's not fair, given you're the only one here. But what we will do is have a quick look at the second assignment, because that should be now starting to be a focus of your attention. And it does involve some aspects of what we've been talking about. But while I bring that up, Sarah, is there any other questions you've got around this idea of creating a vision?
At the moment, I think it's not easy to create a value for the organization or something that I'm going to do, but I'm going to read the paper again and to have some idea like that.
Now, absolutely. And remember, because this is an assignment, you can make things up. It doesn't have to be the real vision or even a real organization. So you're going through the process rather than creating the product. And I don't mind if what you create for your implementation plan doesn't reflect reality in terms of a real organization. But just so that you've gone through the process and you've got an understanding that if you're in a position in the future to be able to do this, you could put in place a plan for implementing some educational technologies. And in any event, you're going to learn a lot more about the complexity of using educational technologies in an organization by having thought through all the different considerations that need to be considered when you're planning to incorporate different educational technologies into an organization. So this is the second assignment, titled Your Implementation Plan. So the first point, as we've been discussing, is to develop an educational vision statement for your selected organization with consideration of pedagogy, curriculum, content, and technology. So that TPAC tripartite. So your vision needs to describe the sorts of teaching, the pedagogy that you would like to see in your organization, what sort of curriculum and content you would see being taught, and most importantly, from the perspective of this course, the sorts of technology that would be used in your organization. Now, as we've discussed, there's a whole range of different aspects that you should include in a vision statement, but they're the particular elements that I need to see for your implementation plan. You can certainly also incorporate ideas of what your organization values and some of the goals and other aspects that are important in your organization, but I do need to see that aspect of pedagogy, curriculum, and technology. You'll then conduct a stakeholder expectations analysis. So going through those processes that we've discussed and thinking through, okay, what would the parents want to see? What would the principal and the school administration, what would they want? What would the teachers want? What might businesses or employers that would be employing the graduates want? What might the students want? What might the support staff want? And all of their different expectations of what should be achieved by such a vision. Then you're going to do what's called a socio-ecosystem analysis. So very much based on your systems model. So you'll use your systems thinking model to consider all the different factors that you've explored in number 2. And again, you may want to draw that out as a systems analysis diagram. But fundamentally, you're going to try to identify all the different intersections between those different stakeholders. What does everyone want to see achieved? Are there bits and pieces that might be contradictory or incompatible? Or areas where there's going to be a lot of overlap, where what's being achieved is very much supported by lots of different stakeholders. Then what I want you to do is look at your vision again and look at your analysis of your organization and see where there are going to be challenges and differences. Your organization may have a lot of difficulties, or the parents and the students might be very much focused on academics and getting high grades, while your vision might be on having them be very socially aware and engaged with making the world a better place. And so there'll be a difference then between what some of your stakeholders want achieved and what your vision is. And you need to consider those aspects. Well, first off, you need to identify them. Then you'll need to work out, okay, from what the organization currently does, what needs to change, excuse me, in order to achieve the vision. And that could be in pedagogy, in curriculum, and in technology. And then you'll describe how your organization will be different in 1 year, 5 years, and 10 years as a result of your implementation plan. And then a few more things that I'll discuss in future weeks around how to actually get your stakeholders to align with your strategies and develop actions to achieve those changes and develop your plan based upon all of those aspects. But as you can see, as with the previous assignment, there's sort of a suggested structure of word length. Your educational vision will be around about 250 words. So it'll be important to put a bit of effort into creating a good vision statement for your organization. And let me just bring up the rubric so that we can clarify that for you. And you'll see that your vision represents a good quarter of the marks. So making sure that you've got a good, clear vision statement. And then it also develops into a good socio-ecosystem analysis is important. I won't go into too much more detail about the assignment just yet, but that's enough to get you sort of thinking about the first couple of steps. But the main bulk of the assignment at the end will be your proposed set of actions of how you're going to achieve your vision and some processes around managing that process, managing that change. But again, we'll be discussing that in more detail in future weeks. Okay, any other questions, Sarah?
Sorry about that, but can you please give me an example to make me easily understand the process of this one, this assignment too? Sorry about that.
Okay, so an example of a implementation plan or an example of a vision statement?
Yes. The implementation plan.
Okay. I'm just thinking where, if I've got, there'll be more detail in our future readings as we go through into more depth into the various sections. At this stage, you probably just need to be thinking about the vision statement and to a certain extent, a systems analysis of your organization, which can pretty much be drawn from what you did for your first assignment. You've already done your systems analysis, and that can be pretty much put then straight into your second assignment, but you'll probably flesh out some specific details as you develop that. I don't have an example just offhand of the entire thing put together, but I will see if I can find some of that, possibly from a previous student's, and I may be able to make that available. I can't promise that just yet, but I'll need to get permissions from the people involved, but I'll see if there's something that I can put together around that for you. Any other questions?
One more question is, you have mentioned that there's some, like assignment 2 is a little bit related to assignment 1. So how can I like use the assignment 1 to write assignment 2?
Okay. Well, in assignment 1, you came up with some particular scenarios about what you would like to see happen with technology, informed by your experts and things of that nature. Is that what you did for assignment 1?
Yeah.
So that
the
can help,
yeah,
the challenges and so forth. So that can help inform your vision. So if you're, from all of that process from assignment 1, you were looking at, say, implementing one-to-one iPads into an organization. What was the main challenge that you came out with from your assignment? I haven't read them all yet.
Yeah, for the because my topic is online learning, the trend, the future trend of online learning and the challenges of online learning. So many experts think the integration and the like relationship between teacher and student or student to student could be like have some impact on the learning outcome.
Yep.
With new technologies also like, yeah, it's hard because even for teachers or students, yeah.
So from just hearing that, one thing you value in terms of your vision would be maintaining the good relationships between students and teachers in an online space. And if that's something you value and you see the need to implement online learning through online management systems and so forth, then your vision could be to ensure that the strong relationships between students and teachers is maintained in using online tools to communicate in remote education or in education over the internet. So you can frame your vision around what you would like to see achieved, informed from some of the things, excuse me, informed from those aspects that you looked at in your first assignment. And your systems analysis of your organization is then you're going to tease that out and start looking at the different stakeholders and what they would like to see achieved around that vision statement. So from the student's perspective, do they value having the relationships, excuse me, the relationships with the teachers? Or maybe they value more the getting high marks or getting through the course quickly. So you'll need to sort of consider that maybe what they value might be somewhat different to what you value. Likewise, parents might be more interested in the cost of the courses and making sure that the students get good jobs or outcomes as a result. So there might be different stakeholders that have got different perspectives, even though you're putting forward this one vision around keeping close relationships between staff and students in an online space. And then your implementation plan will go on how to achieve that vision. And it may be through use of various technologies. It may be through use of small classes. It might be through timetabling so that the same teacher stays with the student across several courses. There could be a whole range of strategies you might come up with that would help achieve that vision. Do you sort of see how I'm framing it to relate to your first assignment?
Yeah, I think I think I can understand how the structure of the assignment to now.
Yep.
Yeah.
It'll take a little while. We'll explore all these across a number of sessions. But the idea is that your vision statement is really informed by what you've come up with through your first assignment. Adding in more, because you'll add in some stuff around values and around some specific objectives that you want to achieve. And your systems model will be fleshed out and made more complex by looking at all the different stakeholders that you've identified and what they want to see happen. So it's not just what you want to see happen, but it's a whole lot of other people that also want to see different things happen.
Okay, I got it.
Okay, but we'll continue this conversation over the next few weeks, and slowly it'll all come together in terms of what's involved in creating an organizational plan. Okay, well, it doesn't look as though there's anyone else joining us this evening, which is a little bit of a challenge.
I think they have just finished their assignment or something. Yeah.
Yes, I am aware that there's lots of assignments due at the moment. But I think we might finish up early then and let you have a bit of chance to read into those documents a bit more and start thinking about questions about your second assignment for next week as you start thinking through what needs to be done for the various stages. And for those watching online later, you may also want to ask questions through our discussion forum or save them up to ask at next week's session as we then progress through getting you ready for your second assignment. So unless there's anything else, Sarah, we'll finish up and let you get back to your studies.
Thank you, Jason.
Okay, good night.
You too. Have a good night. Bye.
Bye-bye.